What exactly are these giant triangles that are scattered along the outskirts of Phoenix, Arizona? Who built them? Why were they built? And when? Well, in today's video, not only are we going to answer these questions, but I'm going to give you a bird's eye view to show you just how massive these triangles are, and we're even going to walk the triangles and see what's out there. But for anyone that may be wondering if these giant triangles have any relation to the Bermuda Triangle, or have any ties to UFOs, aliens, or ancient civilizations, well, sorry to burst your bubble, but they don't. There is absolutely nothing paranormal about these triangles, but that being said, let's dive right in. The first triangle we will be taking a look at is Luke Air Force Base Auxiliary No. 4. Often referred to as the Giant Triangle, this one sits northwest of Phoenix, Arizona near the little town of Whitman. Now, before this became an abandoned Air Force base, they used to train pilots here for practicing approaches. But that begs the question, why the triangle shape? Well, I don't have all day, but here's a quick lesson in aviation. Airplanes take off and land into the wind. By taking off against the wind, it generates more lift under the wings, and the faster it goes, the more lift it generates. Long story short, airplanes that take off and land into the wind do this to minimize speeds in order to get airborne or come to a complete stop. And by having an airstrip in the shape of a triangle, it allowed for 6 different angles to take off and land, and with multiple triangle-shaped Air Force bases nearby, this ensured little to no traffic jams at the bases. I would also like to add that these airfields were utilized by aircraft that was much lighter and smaller, therefore requiring less runway compared to that of your typical commercial airliners. According to wikimapia.org, this airfield was built between July and August of 1942 and closed sometime between 1955 and 1956. And for anyone that might be wondering, if you pull up this triangle on Google Maps and measure each side measures around 4,100 feet, or 1,249 meters for my people on the metric system, and each airstrip is around 300 feet in width, or 91 meters. Next, I decided to make my way into the triangle, hoping to find any sort of remnants of the past, like any old airplane parts, structures, or just anything that was left behind. But I gotta tell ya, out there was the biggest bunch of nothing. All I found was a bunch of cactus, brush, cattle turds, and a bunch of quartz, which was kind of interesting, but nothing to write home about. So according to Google, this was Luke Air Force Base Auxiliary No. 4, and about 6 miles that way, southeast, there is Luke Air Force Base Auxiliary No. 1. That one's not as big, but since we're right here, we're gonna go get the bird up in the sky and see what things look like over there. The next triangle on our stop is Luke Air Force Base Auxiliary No. 1, and this one is located 5.5 miles southeast from the previous triangle. The journey out to this triangle was a little on the sketchy side. I had to take multiple dirt roads that were not the most well maintained, and sadly, this is what happened next. Well, this was kind of a bummer, so I was getting ready to calibrate my drone and take off, but then I got a little prompt that says, "This is restricted airspace, aircraft unable to take off," which is a huge bummer because when I use the app that I use, I'm not going to name it because I don't want to throw them under the bus, but that specific app told me that this was unrestricted airspace and that it was, fair game. But DJI Fly app is telling me it is restricted and it's not even going to let us take off. So that kind of sucks. But I think we can still drive around here and check out the airstrip. I guess they must use the area for training or practices yet. Who knows? Figured I'd show you guys this real quick. So the red obviously outlines the restricted area, and the blue dot is us. We're going to be coming up to the east end of the triangle here. I can't see anything in the triangle, so I don't think there's anything at this one either. But there is like a racetrack over here, so maybe we can go check that out. But yeah, bummer. It's restricted airspace. But we're going to follow the law, so nothing we can do about it. Even though the airspace came up as restricted, I tried launching my drone outside the restricted area, but it still wouldn't take off. And maybe that's a good thing. According to wikimapia.org, this airfield is still used for practice approaches. Now, I didn't see any no trespassing or keep out signs, but if this one's still active, I think I'll keep my distance. But this next triangle we're going to take a look at is in a little bit more of an interesting area. And the next triangle on our stop today is Luke Air Force Base Auxiliary No. 3. This is probably one of the most unique triangles out of all the ones being featured in today's video, mainly because part of it is covered by a recreational complex. Makes me wonder how many people drive around the area here day in and day out without realizing the giant triangle that's etched into the ground. Now, I couldn't find a whole lot of specific information about this triangle, but I think it's safe to assume that it was used for the same purposes. And based off of measurements obtained from Google Maps, this one is pretty similar in size compared to the first triangle we saw in the video. And one thing that caught my eye about this airfield is that this one had an additional airstrip going down the middle, which leads me to believe it probably just offered an additional direction to take off and land. Now, I was really hoping that I would be able to trek across this airfield to take a closer look at the terrain, but this one did have a lot of no trespassing signs posted. But judging by the tire marks on the ground, I think it's safe to say that those signs are just recommendations. But I am glad I had the opportunity to view this one from my drone, because there is some development going on there, and it wouldn't surprise me if years down the road they continued building around the recreational complex, thus erasing what's left of this giant triangle. And if anyone watching this video does have any additional information about these airfields that you'd like to add, feel free to share with us in the comment section down below. Now, just 6 miles northwest of this triangle sits another one, or should I say, part of one. Let me show you. From the triangle here in Surprise, Arizona, if we mosey our way on over to the outskirts of the city, headed toward Wickenburg on Highway 60, we have what's left of this one. But what Google Maps shows versus what I saw on my drone are two completely different pictures. There's been a lot of development going on in this area, and of this long strip of the airfield that you see right here on Google Maps, well, this little end piece that you see right here is all that's left. The next triangle on the list is Luke Auxiliary Field number 6, also known as Goodyear Field. According to azoffroad.net, this satellite airfield was built in 1943, and it supported air traffic and training that took place at nearby Luke Air Force Base. This airfield is the same size as the previous triangles as well, measuring each side at 4,100 feet. Now, the airfield was used for emergency landings and trainings, and also referencing that same website, the Goodyear Field was built for around $263,000. Now, back in those days, most of these auxiliary fields featured only landing runways, but this one featured separate facilities, including buildings and barracks for crew chiefs, pit toilets, crash truck sheds, and even a control tower. But nowadays, there is not a single structure out there, and the only evidence that there was any buildings out there is from these remaining foundations. That same website also mentioned that when the airfield was originally built, it only consisted of 2 runways with a very long taxiway connecting them together, but by 1945 the taxiway was eventually converted into an additional runway. Training operations here at Luke Auxiliary Field number 6 carried on over the years, but by 1971 it was labeled as closed on sectional charts. And if you want to learn a little bit more about this airfield, I'll be sure to link the website down in the description below. The next triangle location is a little more well known than the rest, and not because of the triangle, but because of what's left behind. This triangle sits on what is now called the Gila River Memorial Airport, formerly known as Williams Auxiliary Army Airfield number 5. Now, I won't spend too much time on this location because I made an entire video on it detailing the history, and if you wish to watch that video, I'll post the card in the upper right hand corner and I'll post the link down below. This airfield was built in 1942, and sadly, this is what it looks like today. Scattered throughout the airfield are many World War II era planes, all of which have been unfortunately subject to heavy vandalism. But as you can see, some of the airplanes aren't in too bad a shape, while others look like they've been ripped apart by Godzilla. Now, this one is on a reservation and you are not allowed on the property, but compared to the other airfield locations, this is the only one that has aircraft and a hangar left behind. There has been talk over the years about a casino being put up out here and even expanding the airport, but so far, nothing's transpired. Just behind me is the old Dateland Air Force Auxiliary Field. You couldn't tell from the road or from right here, but just behind me is a giant triangle. And we're gonna get the DJI Mavic Air 2 up in the air in just a second. I kinda wanted to drive out there, but unfortunately, we can't. Here's why. They definitely do not want people out here. Airport property, no trespassing. Violators will be prosecuted. Warning, federal offense. Well, we're not gonna damage anything or disable anything. We're gonna get the drone up in the air and check stuff out. I was kind of bummed because there is what appears to be an old bunker out there. I saw a lot of photos of that online. We'll just have to get the drone out there and see what it looks like. Let's get this bad boy up in the air. What you're looking at is Dateland Army Airfield. It was established here in January of 1943. This airfield sits between Yuma and Gila Bend, Arizona off of Interstate 8, pretty much out in the middle of nowhere. Now the left side of the triangle measures just over a mile, while the other two sides measure at 4,300 feet. According to the plaque located at the nearby travel center, the base was originally designed for single-engine gunnery training, but was converted to a twin-engine gunnery school in 1943. I also read on another article titled Abandoned and Little-Known Airfields that this was later converted to B-25 bomber training. And here's a picture I took of the plaque. Feel free to pause the video if you wish to read the entire thing. Now that same article also shed light on the nature of this bunker, which was previously used to site the machine guns of Dateland's B-25 Mitchell bombers. Now over the years, various training operations were carried out here, until 1957, when the hangar and other flight line buildings mysteriously burned down. According to wikiwand.com, the Air Force sent in an investigation team to do an inventory check on the B-25 parts, and found none. The officer in charge was later court-martialed and the base permanently closed in 1957. I do want to cross the highway here and take a look at that old building. It could have very well just been a bathroom or a rest stop because there is a travel center and a gas station right down the street, but my money says it could have also been an old bunkhouse for some of the residents that stayed here at the auxiliary field, because it is right next to that grouping of those old foundations, so we're gonna go check it out. There she is. I haven't done a whole lot of urban exploration in a minute, except for my last video, but whenever you see an old building like this, you can't help but want to go in and take a look. I don't think we're gonna find any clues in here. I would say this was probably an old bunkhouse, or some sort of building that was associated with the airfield. But it looks like anything that probably would have been in here from back in the day has probably been taken out, just a bunch of trash. Let's take a look in the other one. Not a whole lot going on in here either. Oil. A pair of jeans. Well, that was cool for a whole 10 minutes. There was that little... Is this like an old crawl space or something? Something to do with water, I'm guessing. Once I get back home from this trip, I'm gonna go online and see if I can find old photos of the auxiliary base and just try to show you guys a before and after. But I would say this building definitely belonged to the base. After seeing all these triangles, it's crazy to think how many of them are scattered throughout the desert. You could be walking by one or hiking in one and you wouldn't even know it.